In this video, I want to talk about what else we can find in that huge amount of information stored digitally as data, which is now available within our digital world. This complements my exploration of Wikipedia as a reinvention of printed media and the paper reference resource, the encyclopedia. Here, I will also be looking forward to other videos on digital creation and consumption. So, how else beyond the encyclopedia has the World Wide Web allowed media to evolve? Here, we need to talk about news and how we can now find out about what is happening in the world. Let's start with a quick bit of history. The idea of sharing updates on what is happening in the world around us, near and far, is nothing new, especially in the form of the newspaper. That is what we normally take to be information printed about current or recent events on unstapled paper. To take England, for example, the first newspaper appeared in 1702 with the Daily Courant. The publication of the Daily Courant marks an important moment in the history of news publications. It was the first newspaper to consistently identify the place and source of publication of reports. The reason for this, the editor said, was so that the general public may be better able to judge of the credibility and fairness of what was being documented. Meanwhile, the editor added, he as editor would not give any comments or conjectures of his own, but instead relate only matter of fact, supposing other people have sense enough to make reflections for themselves. To translate this 18th century speech to modern terms, the paper set out to record and relay information about what was happening without expressing any opinion on these events. In other words, the Daily Courant was looking to offer a reference point for readers interested in current affairs. To become this meant it was important to document the sources the newspaper itself had used. With this information in hand, readers were invited to form their own judgments on what was happening. In sum, the newspaper was looking to develop a relationship of trust between the creator or creators of the news content and the reader. Central to this was to cast the newspaper as what we would now call in textual criticism an authority on news information. The Daily Courant was one of the many newspapers, receptacles of current affairs information which were published in England and elsewhere in the world. Fast forward 300 years, and the news landscape is very different. Take a moment to think about where you get your news from. Is it from printed sources? Is it from an online source? Is it maybe from another medium, television or radio perhaps? Research tells us that it might well depend on your age. In 2018, a study in the US pointed to television as a key source for older demographics. Note the sources for 18 to 29-year-olds. Print newspaper usage is very low, whilst social media is the most prominent source. Take this survey from 2019 that looked at where teenagers in the US get their news. Here, we find that over half of teens get their news from social media. I will explore the workings and implications of social media in another video. For now, I want to think about what it means that news from social media, as well as this graph suggests, news from news websites is on the rise. In other words, what does it mean that many of us, especially young people, and those who have access to the internet, are now reading a lot of news online and seemingly for free? You can pause the video now to think about this. Here are some points that I would like to highlight. Number one, it indicates that the speed at which we want to consume news has changed. Increasing numbers of us want to go online and get updates on news we care about as soon as possible. We want to know what is happening almost anywhere in the world, almost in real time. And many of us do not want to pay to read this information. Number two, it indicates that the way in which news is being created has been forced to change. To keep up with and satisfy this shift in consumption, news outlets have had to evolve. They now find themselves in an increasingly competitive environment, an environment which sees different media outlets competing for our attention every second we spend online. This has quite the cascade effect on how, by which I mean who pays, and what information is created and released online, how it is presented to us, and how we consume all of this. I will tackle these aspects in a later video. For now, I want to underline the extent to which the internet has started a fresh, and as I will explore later, challenging chapter in how information about current events is shared, both in terms of speed and in terms of content.